I heard the executive director before I could scent him. But the worst part was that he could scent me. At least, that's the only explanation I have for how this day went from mild disaster to career homicide in under an hour. My name's Evan Reed, I'm an Omega, and according to my last 3 performance reviews, I'm a high-potential employee with significant difficulties respecting hierarchy, communication protocols, and silence. Which is a very polite way of saying, my mouth runs faster than my survival instinct. To be fair, I wasn't trying to start a riot at the morning briefing. It just happened. Like most disasters in my life. The conference room on the 21st floor was all glass and ego. Floor-to-ceiling windows with the city spread out like a smug postcard, polished table. Long enough to land a small aircraft, chairs that cost more than my monthly rent. The air smelled like burnt coffee, cold metal, and stressed-out wolves trying very hard to appear civilized. I sat near the middle, my notebook open, pen tapping against my knee. My nose was already doing its usual thing, cataloging everything. Cheap cologne on the junior analyst to my left. Too much musk from the alpha sales director at the far end. The nervous sweat of the beta intern whose leg hadn't stopped bouncing for 10 minutes. I hated that my senses worked overtime. No off switch. No filter. Just raw data shoving itself into my brain, whether I wanted it or not. And as you can see, droned my manager, Mr. Randall, our numbers this quarter show a modest, improvement. They're not modest, I said before my brain got in the way. They're miscategorized. 20 heads turned toward me. Great. Again. Randall blinked behind his glasses. I beg your pardon, Evan? I could have shut up. Swallowed it. Let the spreadsheet lies pass. Instead, I clicked my pen and leaned forward. You shifted recurring revenue into the new acquisition column, I said, nodding toward the projected slide. Makes the growth look prettier, but it's not accurate. If we present this to the board, they're going to notice. The junior analyst to my left inhaled sharply. I could feel his terror in the air like static. The 2 alpha directors at the far end of the table both stiffened, their sense sharpening, irritation, challenge, that lovely hot metal tang that meant their wolves were pacing just under the skin. Fantastic. Now we had their attention. Randall's scent went from stale coffee to burnt toast. I'm sure the analytics team knows what they're doing. They do, I said quickly, trying to save it and somehow making it worse. I checked their raw queries yesterday. They were fine. Someone changed the categorization in the final report. I tilted my head. Which is your part, isn't it? Yeah. There it was. The moment the room dropped 10 degrees. The alpha on the right, Mr. Hargrove from sales, let out a low exhale. It was almost a growl. The other alpha from risk narrowed his eyes at me like I was something he couldn't decide whether to eat or fire. The air thickened, their pheromones rising in a slow, simmering wave. My heartbeat didn't even spike. I'm used to that kind of pressure, alphas puffing themselves up to make the omegas and betas behave. It rolled off me like steam, annoying but familiar. If anything, the weight of it made me feel more awake. Randall's face turned an alarming shade of pink. Evan, he said, voice tight. This is neither the time nor the place to... It is exactly the time and place, I cut in, because apparently I have a death wish. We're about to send a report to the board of Glass Pike Holdings that's technically misleading. If you want them to trust our division, maybe don't lie to their faces. You could hear the collective wince without anyone making a sound. The beta intern's leg bounced harder. A trickle of cold fear hit my nose. Somebody else was sweating through their shirt. Hargrove's scent sharpened, spicy, irritated. Watch your tone, he said, voice low. And your accusations, added the other alpha. Calm. Dangerous kind of calm. I smiled at them, because when I'm nervous, I either crack jokes or combust. I'm watching. I'm just not impressed. Randall actually choked. Evan. I sighed and leaned back in my chair, trying to look small and harmless and definitely not like the idiot who'd just questioned half the senior staff in one breath. It didn't work. It never does. Here's the thing. I don't like being ordered around, and I like stupidity even less. For an Omega, that's not ideal. People expect us to be soft, compliant, good at smoothing things over. Not poking holes in power structures with a metaphorical fork. My instincts never got that memo. Let's move on, Randall said, tugging at his tie. Slide 12, please. The analyst at the laptop fumbled with the clicker. The projection changed, but the tension didn't. Hargrove's scent stayed sharp. The Risk Alpha's gaze stayed on me just a fraction too long. I could feel my presence throwing everything off balance. Like someone had bumped the table, and all the pretty pieces were threatening to fall. By the time the meeting staggered to an end, Randall was sweating, the intern looked ready to faint, and I'd got at least 3 mental death threats from across the room. "Evan," Randall said, the second the others started filing out. "Stay." 3 of my least favorite words. I stayed. Mostly because I was curious what punishment they'd invented this time. The door swung shut behind the last person. The sense of the room thinned, leaving only Randall's burnt toast anxiety and my own restless energy. He wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. Who still used handkerchiefs? "Evan, what were you thinking? That we shouldn't lie to the board?" I offered. "You corrected me in front of the entire senior team. I also saved you from sending a misleading report," I pointed out. "You're welcome, by the way. Ethics are good for business now, didn't you read the memo?" He stared at me like he wanted to throttle me and hug me at the same time, then remembered I was technically his subordinate, and he'd get sued for both. "You are a talented analyst," he said slowly. "But you are impulsive, insubordinate, and you make everyone around you tense." "That's not my fault," I said. "They're the ones with fragile egos. It is your fault when you poke at those egos with a stick." His voice cracked on the last word. I winced. "Okay, fair. Maybe I should use a softer stick." He closed his eyes and inhaled through his nose. I watched, fascinated, as his shoulders rolled with the effort of not screaming. "At this rate," he said quietly, "no one on this floor is going to want to work with you. The alphas are already complaining to HR. They say your presence is disruptive. Maybe they should work on their impulse control," I muttered. He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Evan, please. Just once. Help me help you." There it was. That weary edge that meant the decision was already made. My stomach tightened. "What did they say?" He glanced at the door, then back at me. "You're being transferred." "Oh, good," I said. "I've always wanted a change of scenery." "Where to?" "Another floor of people who hate me but in a different color scheme?" His scent flared with nervousness, and for the first time all morning, a trickle of unease slid down my spine. "The 33rd, he said. Everything in me stilled. The 33rd. The quiet floor. Officially it was strategic analysis and special projects. Unofficially, it was the floor nobody talked about unless they lowered their voices first. The one where the wolves who'd passed all the control tests went. Where they put the refined ones. The ones who didn't flinch, didn't snap, didn't slip. The ones you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley if they ever decided to stop behaving. "I thought that floor was full," I said. "They're making an exception." Randall's eyes skittered away. "Director Hayes approved it personally." Director Hayes, the executive director of that floor. My skin prickled. "Why?" "Because," he said, voice long-suffering, "no one else knows what to do with you." I snorted. "So your plan is to dump the loud Omega on the floor full of elite hyper-controlled wolves and hope I learn, what, inner peace?" He gave me a thin smile. "Or at least learn to shut up." I slapped a hand to my chest dramatically. "You wound me, sir." "Pack your things, Evan," he said, ignoring that. "HR will send you the formal transfer notice. You start on the 33rd tomorrow morning." Wow. Swift execution. I stood, grabbed my notebook, then paused. "Is this, like a punishment, or a promotion?" "A little of both," he sighed. "Think of it as a cloister, a monastery made of glass." I grimaced. "So I'm being sent to meditate with wolves. Just..." He waved a hand, exhausted. "Try not to start any fires." "No promises," I said, and left before he could change his mind. The elevator to the upper floors was quieter than the others. Newer, smoother, too well-oiled to squeak. No cheerful music, no chatter. Just stainless steel walls, mirrors that showed you every angle of your own bad decisions, and a panel of slick silver buttons. I stood there the next morning with my cardboard box, plant, pen holder, stack of sticky notes, one very judgmental stress ball, and watched my reflection as the numbers climbed. 23. 24. 25. I'd slept badly. My senses had been buzzing all night, worrying at a single thought: they want me on the quiet floor. Me. The noisy problem child. I should have been scared. Instead, I felt wired. Curious. like standing on the edge of a rooftop and leaning just a little too far forward. 29. 30. 31. The higher we went, the more the air changed. Not in scent, Glass Pike's ventilation system was too good for that, but in pressure. Like the elevator was moving through layers of expectation. By 32, my ears felt weird. Not popping, just straining. As if the world up here ran at a different volume, and my body was trying to adjust. 33. The doors slid open without a sound. For a second, I just stared. The 33rd floor didn't look like an office. It looked like one of those minimalist architecture spreads people post online to prove they have taste and no personality. White walls, warm wood accents, soft gray carpet that swallowed footsteps. The light was diffuse and gentle, spilling from long recessed strips in the ceiling. Glass partitions divided the space into quiet pods and conference rooms, but everything felt open, airy, controlled, and silent. Not just no one's talking silent. The kind of silence that had weight. Like the floor itself had decided noise was beneath it. I stepped out, my sneakers sinking into the carpet without a sound. The box in my arms suddenly felt too loud. A beta at the reception desk glanced up. Her hair was cropped short, her eyes cool and assessing. She gave me a once-over that took in my slightly rumpled shirt, my faded navy chinos, the scuffed sneakers I'd pretended were urban casual when really they were just old. "New transfer?" she said in a low voice. "Is it that obvious?" I asked, pasting on a smile. "You're the only one who looks like he slept less than 8 hours. She stood, coming around the desk. Her scent was clean, crisp like green tea and printer paper. "I'm Ellen Hayes is in his office. I'll let him know you're here." Hayes. The director. My new boss's boss. "Great," I said. Looking forward to our mutual disappointment. Her lips twitched. Not quite a smile but close. "You can leave your things here. I'll show you your desk after." As she picked up the phone, I let my gaze drift over the floor. The people here moved differently. Straight backs, efficient gestures, no wasted motion. Wolves in business casual, but nothing about them felt casual. They didn't fidget. They didn't gossip. A few typed, fingers gliding over keyboards in steady rhythms. One guy stood by the window, tablet in hand, utterly still except for his eyes. No one smelled anxious. No one smelled excited. It was all smoothed out to this strange, even baseline. It was like walking into a room full of predators who'd all agreed to pretend they were herbivores. "Mr. Hayes will see you," Ellen said, hanging up. "End of the hall, last door on the right." I nodded, picked up my box and walked down the corridor. The hallway was lined with glass-walled offices, shades half-drawn, subtle nameplates, soft reflections of my own face following me. With every step the silence wrapped tighter around my shoulders, trying to tuck me in. End of the hall. Last door on the right. I didn't make it that far. Before I could reach it, another door opened. No sound, no warning. Just the sudden presence of someone stepping into the corridor ahead of me. He was taller than me. Broad shoulders under a charcoal suit that probably had its own reservation at a high-end dry cleaner. White shirt, dark tie, cuffs sharp against his wrists. His hair was dark and neatly cut. Not a strand out of place. His posture was so straight it made my own spine try to imitate. And his eyes, light gray, cool, observant. The kind of gaze that didn't just look at you, but through you, cataloging strengths, weaknesses, potential liabilities. I would have braced myself for the usual alpha thing, pressure, scent, that heavy weight in the air. Instead, I felt nothing. No scent. Not muted. Not faint. Nothing. As if he weren't a wolf at all, just a very realistic cardboard cutout that had come to life. My steps faltered. "Okay," I muttered under my breath. "That's not creepy at all." He turned slightly, and those gray eyes locked onto mine. The world narrowed. For a heartbeat, everything else, the glass, the white walls, the soft light, fell away. It was just me, my too quick pulse, and that gaze pinning me where I stood. The box in my arms suddenly felt too light. My body, too aware. He didn't smell like anything. But the absence of scent was its own statement. Like walking into a room where there should be music, and finding absolute silence instead. Is that normal? I thought. Is he even alive? I told myself to keep moving. Smile, introduce yourself, don't be weird. I walked forward. He stepped aside to let me pass. For 1 second, we were close. Close enough that I could see the faint line of a scar near his collarbone, where the shirt didn't fully hide it. Close enough to feel the warmth coming off him. Human heat beneath all that controlled exterior. And then something shifted. His nostrils flared. Just barely. His shoulders froze. I felt it, like the flicker of a match in a dark room. He stopped walking. I did too, because my body obeys danger before my brain catches up. Those gray eyes sharpened, the control fracturing by a millimeter. He turned his head toward me more fully, the movement too sudden, too precise, to be casual. "What's your name?" he asked. His voice was low, rougher than I expected. It slid along my nerves like a touch I hadn't consented to but couldn't quite pull away from. My mouth moved on autopilot. "Evan," I said. "And do you usually breathe like that at new hires?" A beat of silence. Then, to my shock, the corner of his mouth twitched, almost like he might smile if he remembered how. He didn't. Instead, he inhaled again, slower this time, as if confirming something only his senses could tell him. I felt it then. Not his scent, but the reaction to mine. A crackle in the air, a subtle tightening in his jaw. My own body reacted in ways I hated. Knees a little weaker, heat creeping up. My neck, breath catching like my lungs had suddenly decided to go on break. No one had ever reacted to me like that before. Not like I was significant. Not like my scent was anything but background noise. His fingers flexed at his side, tendons shifting under the skin. For a man who looked like a statue carved out of self-control, it was practically a full-body flinch. "This is the new transfer?" he asked, more to Ellen, who had silently appeared behind me at some point, then to me. "Yes, sir," she said. "Sir, of course. Executive Director, Liam Hayes." I didn't need Ellen to say his name. I knew it. Everyone in the building knew it. The ghost of Glasspike's quiet floor. The alpha who didn't react to anyone. The man whose presence supposedly calmed entire rooms. He didn't look calm now. The air felt denser. My skin prickled with awareness. My heartbeat stuttered and then took off in a sprint, my body trying to decide between fight, flight, or leaning in like an idiot. He stared at me for one long, stretched-out second. Then his eyes cooled. The mask slid back into place so smoothly I would have doubted I'd seen the crack at all, if not for the way my body still hummed with adrenaline. "Evan Reed," he said, like he'd already memorized my file. "Leave your things with Ellen." Then, he paused. His throat worked, like the next words didn't want to come out. "Then," he repeated, voice dropping lower, "step out. Now." It wasn't loud. It wasn't shouted. But it hit my nervous system like a command wired into the bone. An alpha order, the kind no one had ever successfully used on me before. My legs took a step back before my pride caught up. I stared at him, at the faint tension in his jaw, at the way his gaze refused to slide past me to anything else. "What the hell?" I said brilliantly. "Sure. I can step out." I retreated, my heart beating a chaotic rhythm against my ribs. My knees were a little shaky, my cheeks felt hot. My body was still buzzing with the knowledge that someone had, for the first time in my life, reacted to my scent like it meant something. I handed my box back to Ellen with numb fingers. "Is he always like that?" I whispered. She gave me a careful, bland look. "Director Hayes," she said, "doesn't usually react to anyone at all." Great. So either I'd just broken the quiet floor's legendary alpha, or he'd just broken something in me. Either way, one thought settled heavy in my gut as I watched his office door close behind him, silent as a held breath. What the hell did I just walk into? If you've never been watched by a room full of highly trained predators, pretending to be harmless admin staff, I don't recommend it. "Your desk will be here," Ellen said, gesturing to an immaculate workstation near the middle of the open space. "Please keep personal items minimal. Clutter distracts." I set my cardboard box down and looked around. The 33rd floor was one giant open-plan landscape with glass islands. Desks in neat rows, monitors at the exact same angle. Cable management so perfect it probably had its own style guide. The light was soft and even. The air cool and neutral. No buzzing printers, no ringing phones, no random laughter from the sales department. Just the faint clack of keys, and the soft exhale of the climate system. And wolves. So many wolves. I could smell it under the sterile office scent. Layers of power pressed flat like someone had ironed it. Every person I looked at held tension in their shoulders a certain way, moved with a certain smoothness. Controlled. Everything about this floor said, nothing slips here. Evan, right? Ellen asked, pulling me back. Yeah. I tried for a casual grin. Is now a bad time to say I thrive in chaos? Her mouth did that almost smile again. Consider this. Exposure therapy. That sounds ominous. It's honest, she said. You'll sit here. Logging credentials should already be updated for 33rd access. I dropped into the chair. It was ergonomic, comfortable, and somehow still managed to feel like it expected better posture from me. Ellen nodded toward the nearest row of desks. I'll introduce you to your immediate neighbors. Oh good. Social anxiety, my old friend. With wolves. She led the way, heels silent on the carpeting. We stopped by a desk where a young guy in glasses was typing with manic intensity, neck bent at an angle that screamed future chiropractor bills. His scent was nervous, a twitchy mix of coffee and adrenaline. Yun, Ellen said. This is Evan. He'll be working on cross-floor analytics with your team. Yun's fingers paused mid-air. He looked up like someone had cut him loose from a train of thought at high speed. Oh, he said. Hi. His eyes flickered over me, then immediately down again, like he was afraid eye contact might cause a system error. Nice to meet you, I said. Love the code face. Very hacker core. He blinked. Thanks. Ellen continued. Yoon is our lead systems engineer. If something breaks, he fixes it. If something doesn't break, he worries until it does. That's a rude but accurate summary, he murmured. His gaze skated past me again, to the space around me, then darted away. His scent sharpened for a second. I watched him swallow, shoulders inching up. You're, Omega, right? He asked. Last time I checked, I said. Why? He shook his head quickly. Nothing, just... His eyes flicked to the far end of the floor, where Hayes's office door sat like a closed mouth. Just... Don't get too close to the conference rooms without warning. That's specific, I said. Should I be carrying a bell? Please don't, Ellen said. Noise carries... Which brings us to the next neighbor, she added, already turning. A few desks down sat someone so still I'd mistaken him for a decorative element. Slim, dark hair falling over his forehead, hands folded neatly on the desk. His scent was soft, mild, almost non-existent, like he'd spent years learning to fade himself out. Marlowe, Ellen said. This is Evan. He's also Omega. Also Omega. Interesting choice of phrasing. Marlowe looked up. His eyes were a warm, gentle brown, but there was a wary edge under the softness, like he was measuring the volume of me from 10 meters away. Hi, I said. I promise I'm house-trained. Mostly, a tiny startled huff escaped him. Almost a laugh, almost. Welcome, he said quietly. If you need help with floor procedures or expectations, I can explain. It was a lot at first. Translation, I said. You've survived the monastery and can guide me through the rites. Ellen cleared her throat. This isn't a monastery. Funny, I said. Feels like one. Do you guys have silent lunches? Yun made a small strangled noise. We don't have silent lunches. They're just efficient, Marlowe added, then dropped his gaze again, shoulders subtly curling in. They were watching me, but not openly. Sideways glances, scent shifts. Curiosity, discomfort. Something else I couldn't quite name. Like I was a wild card someone had accidentally shuffled into the deck. So, I said, clapping my hands once. Way too loud for this floor. A couple of heads jerked up in the distance. Ellen actually winced. Ground rules. Do you all really never talk? Is there like a no breathing above a whisper policy I missed in the HR packet? There was a beat of silence. The absurdity of my own question hit me mid-air. Ellen looked at me, expression perfectly bland. We prefer minimized noise, she said. So you do breathe in a whisper, I pressed. Preferably, she said. Yun's shoulders shook once, like he'd just suppressed a laugh so violently it almost evacuated his soul. You're going to get eaten, he muttered into his keyboard. By whom? I asked. You all seem very non-bitey. No one answered that. Ellen checked her watch. You have a brief orientation with Director Hayes in 15 minutes. Conference room, She nodded toward a glass-walled space on the far side of the floor. Try not to be late. Or early. Okay, I said. I'll aim for quantum punctuality. Both and neither. She stared at me like she was updating an internal risk assessment. Just "Be on time," she said, and walked off. 15 minutes turned into 10, then 8, then my own nerves got the better of me. I told myself I was just going to peek into the room layout, which is the sort of lie you tell when you're already halfway out of your chair. Conference room A was all glass and white walls. A floating oval table in the center, chromed. Legs, chairs that looked like they belonged in a magazine spread about executive focus. The far wall showed a muted city view, skyscrapers softened by double layers of glass and soundproofing. I stepped inside, the door whispering shut behind me. My footsteps were swallowed by the thick carpet. No screens were on yet, no documents laid out, just stillness. My reflection blinked back at me from the glass wall, rumpled shirt, laptop bag slung over one shoulder, hair that refused to cooperate with any known styling product. I looked like I'd accidentally wandered into a high-end simulation of professionalism, and someone was going to notice the glitch any minute. I walked around the table, fingers trailing over the smooth surface. I tried to imagine the kind of discussions that happened in here. Strategic restructuring, high-level predictions, calm, moderated, perfectly controlled debate. And then, there was me. My scent spooled out in the air, restless, sharp around the edges. I could feel it, like heat diffusing. No one had ever taught me how to hide it. No one had cared enough to try. Downstairs, it blended into the general background noise of the building. Up here? It felt louder. I was halfway through arranging a row of clickers into a smiley face when the door opened behind me. No noise. No warning. Just that shift in pressure that told me someone had entered the room with intent. I straightened too quickly, clickers skidding, and turned. Liam Hayes stood in the doorway. Charcoal suit again. Different tie. Same impossibly controlled posture. His expression was neutral in that dangerous way. Smooth, unreadable. Every muscle under precise orders not to reveal anything. The only thing slightly off was his breathing. It hit me before my brain caught up. One deep inhale, just a little too sharp for a man who'd supposedly forgotten how to react. His gaze locked onto me. The rest of the room faded. "Oh, so that wasn't a one-time thing. You again," he said. His voice had that same low roughness as before, like it had been unused for too long and was still warming up. I lifted a hand, in the flesh. "Sorry. I can leave if this room is reserved for people with their life together." One eyebrow twitched. "Barely. If we were keeping score, that counted as an emotional outburst." "You're early," he said. "I don't like it when people are early." "Wow," I said. "Didn't realize there was a schedule for existing." The air between us thickened. He inhaled again, smaller this time, like he was trying not to, but his body didn't care. Every time his chest expanded, my nerves jumped. "You were told to report at 10, he said. "It's 9:53. "That's still technically around 10, I said. "I thought initiative was valued in this company." "Not that kind," he said, and took a step into the room. I felt it, the second he crossed some invisible line, whatever air barrier existed snapped, and his awareness hit me like a physical touch. His gaze drifted just briefly to the space around me, like he was triangulating the exact contour of my scent. My skin prickled. I hated that my body responded so quickly, like some over-eager apprentice reacting to a master's voice. Knees a little weaker, throat dry. My instinct stretched toward him, curious, despite myself. "Sorry, my molecules are unsupervised," I said. "I'll tell them to line up in single file next time." He stared at me. "Do you ever stop talking?" "Only when I'm asleep," I said, and even then, questionable. Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance, amusement, I couldn't tell. He looked away, jaw clenching. The tendons in his neck stood out more than a calm man's should. It was, weirdly, flattering, in a possibly self-destructive way. "So?" I said, because apparently I have no sense of self-preservation. "Am I triggering some kind of allergic reaction?" "You look like you want to sneeze." His gaze snapped back to mine, sharp enough to cut. "I wish it were an allergy," he said. There was too much weight in that to be a joke. Heat crawled up my neck. "Wow, that bad, huh?" "You have no idea," he said quietly. He didn't mean my personality, not entirely. The realization hit me with an almost audible click. He wasn't just irritated with me. He was irritated with himself. With his body. With the fact that, in a world where he'd been numb for years, something in me had found a way under his armor. He broke eye contact, turning to the control panel on the wall. His shoulders were too straight. his movements too precise, like he was operating on manual override. "You were transferred because you caused disruption downstairs," he said, as if reading from a file. "Frequent boundary issues, verbal impulsivity, poor respect for hierarchy." "Ouch," I said. "You forgot great hair and excellent taste in coffee." He ignored that. "This floor is not like the others. Everyone here has undergone extensive training to suppress instinctive responses. We work on sensitive projects, with sensitive clients. Any noise," he didn't mean sound, "can compromise focus." "Let me guess," I said. "I'm the noise." He looked at me again, and this time, there was no mask hiding the strain. "You're loud," he said, voice low. "In ways that don't involve your mouth." My heart did something stupid in my chest. Is that an HR complaint or a compliment?" "I haven't decided," he said. We just stood there for a moment. Me, trying not to fidget. Him, trying not to breathe like he could taste me in the air. "So, why am I here?" I asked. "If I'm such a risk to your focus." His gaze flickered. "Because you're very good at what you do," he said. "And this floor needs that. We handle data the other divisions don't see. You'll learn quickly, or you'll be moved again." "Moved where?" I asked. "The roof?" His mouth almost twitched. "Do you always deflect with humor?" "Yes," I said. "Do you always deflect with monotone?" "Monotone is efficient." "So is being a robot," I said. "Not as fun though." He exhaled, long and controlled. "Sit," he said, nodding toward a chair. "We'll go over your clearance levels before the others join." Others. Right. This was supposed to be an orientation, not a staring contest. I circled the table, dropping into a chair a little to the side of his. My leg bounced under the table. I forced it still. The room felt too small, no matter how much glass it had. He tapped a tablet, screens lighting up along the wall behind him. Bright graphs, secure portals, acronyms I'd have to commit to memory, or die trying. As he explained protocols, what I could access, what I'd never see without 6 levels of approval, I tried to listen. I really did. But every few seconds I caught the way his nostrils flared, the way his hand tightened on the tablet, the tiny pause before he moved closer to point at something on the screen. Like he was calculating radius of exposure. He was avoiding looking at me directly. Not because he was uninterested. Because it cost him something. "Director," I said, when he paused. "Can I ask something?" "You already are," he said. "Why me?" He frowned. "Because HR assigned." "No," I said. "Why am I the one your, whatever it is, reacts to?" His eyes went flat. He set the tablet down very carefully. "That is not relevant to your role," he said. "It feels pretty relevant to my day-to-day," I said. "Like, if I'm a walking fire alarm, I'd like to know what I'm set to detect." A muscle worked in his jaw. "Your scent profile is atypical," he said finally. "It cuts through conditioning." I blinked. "My, what?" He looked away, gaze fixed on some neutral point over my shoulder. "I don't respond to anyone else on this floor," he said. "Or in this building. That was the point of being here." The way he said point made my chest ache in a way I wasn't prepared for. "So you're saying I'm special," I said, "because feelings are terrifying and humor is cheap armor." "I'm saying you're a problem," he said quietly. "And this floor doesn't do problems. Must be why they imported me," I said. "To diversify." "You're not taking this seriously." "I am," I said. "I just don't know how I'm supposed to behave when my very existence makes your thing go haywire." He looked at me then properly, and the force of his attention nearly knocked me back in my chair. "Carefully," he said. "You're supposed to behave carefully." Something in my chest tightened. Careful has never been my strong suit. From the corner of my eye I saw movement, shadows at the glass. Ellen and a couple of others approaching. The rest of my orientation party. He saw it too, straightened, smoothed it all away. "Stand over there," he said, nodding to the far side of the table. "Away from the door." "Why?" I asked. "So I can walk in and out without." He broke off, like he'd almost admitted something out loud. "Just do it." I stood, circling to the other side as asked. For a second, we were close in passing, the space between us narrowing to less than a foot. His heat brushed my arm like a live wire. Every nerve in my body lit up. I stopped without meaning to. So did he. 30 centimeters. Maybe less. close enough to see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the almost invisible scar near his throat, the way his pupils had blown just a little wider. I could feel his body struggling with itself. Breath shallow, shoulders tight. He stared straight ahead, clearly focused on not looking at me. Even his fingers curled against the edge of the table, knuckles pale with effort. "Director," I started, voice quieter than I meant. "Don't," he said, just as quiet. There was a tremor in it. A real one. Then, even softer, so low I felt it more than heard it. "Move away." "While I can still ask." The echo of it ran through me like a shiver. I stepped back, heart hammering. The moment snapped, leaving only the echo and the ghost of his heat on my skin. The door opened. Ellen and 2 others came in, perfectly calm, perfectly unaware that the air pressure in the room had just changed. "Orientation, then?" one of them asked. "Let's begin," Hayes said, voice smooth and collected again, like nothing had happened. I took my seat, palms still damp, mind racing. Fear was definitely in there, coiled low in my gut. But stronger than that, sharper, hotter, was curiosity. Whatever was happening here, whatever I'd stepped into on this quiet floor where nothing was supposed to slip, I wasn't sure if I wanted to escape it. I wanted to push, to see what would happen if the man who'd been taught not to feel finally stopped obeying. And for the first time since I'd walked into Glasspike's immaculate, controlled shrine to professionalism, one thought made me almost smile. Let's see how quiet this place really stays. The 33rd floor had mastered the art of pretending nothing happened. Which was impressive, considering the executive director had nearly come apart. Like a badly wired elevator just from standing too close to me yesterday. But wolves here were trained. Programmed, almost. They didn't gossip loudly. They didn't whisper behind hands. They communicated in glances, in sense shifts, in threads of tension so thin you'd miss them unless you were me. And unfortunately, I was me. It started mid-morning when I stepped into the kitchenette for tea and accidentally overheard a conversation happening in the hallway behind the half-open door. "No, really," a voice whispered. He didn't react, not once. "For years. That's why they moved him up here," another replied. Director Hayes passed every control benchmark. They called him the perfect regulator. Perfect regulator? Great. My boss was a walking emotional circuit breaker. The first voice answered. "Lower. They say he's a broken alpha, conditioning since he was a teenager, something about a family program, some experimental suppressant. He doesn't feel anything." My hand froze on the tea tin. Broken alpha. Suppressant. Didn't feel anything. Yun's nervous voice chimed in, barely audible. "He hasn't reacted to a scent in 15 years. He doesn't respond to anyone." A faint shiver slid down my spine. 15 years. Not yesterday. Not this morning. Not ever. Until me. I stood there, hidden behind the door, the kettle humming, steam rising around me like soft fog. "He's not dangerous," Marlowe said quietly. "He's just empty." "Empty is scarier," Yun muttered. "At least you can predict dangerous." There was a soft sigh. "Anyway," Ellen concluded, "if Director Hayes reacted yesterday, it was because something slipped in the protocol. The new guy probably smelled irregular. Irregular. That was one way to put it." I leaned my forehead on the doorframe and exhaled. I didn't even know what emotion hit me first. Offense? Curiosity? Fear? But mostly, why? Why me, when he hadn't reacted to anyone in a decade and a half? Footsteps approached, and the group began to disperse. I stepped away before they found me lurking like a creep with a tea bag. But the question burned behind my ribs, a slow, persistent heat. If he can't smell anyone, why can he smell me? The rest of the morning, I caught him avoiding me with professional precision, turning into a different corridor, handing off tasks to Ellen that he normally did. Himself, keeping his gaze firmly away from any space my molecules might occupy. Which was very considerate, but it didn't help that I had actual work to deliver to him. Eventually I needed his signature on a report. Which is how I ended up in the elevator with him. Well, how I ended up stepping into the elevator at the exact second he did. "Perfect," I muttered. "Quantum entanglement." He didn't look at me. Not directly. Just that sharp flick of recognition. "Floor 33, he said to the panel, voice low and clipped. "Same," I said. "The doors closed. And the elevator shuddered." I blinked. That normal?" "No," he said. A second later, the lights flickered, the machinery groaned, and the elevator lurched to a stop so hard I stumbled into the wall. The emergency lights snapped on, dim yellow, humming faintly. Great. Perfect setting for a horror movie featuring two emotionally constipated wolves. Are we stuck? I asked. Yes, he said. Obviously. You don't have to be rude about it. I'm not, he said. I'm being factual. Well, your facts have attitude. Silence. Well, not silence. I could hear him breathing. Slow at first. Then, not slow. A tiny, tiny hitch. I turned my head toward him. He was standing with his back rigid against the opposite wall, one hand braced slightly behind him. His jaw tight. His chest rising faster than before. Are you okay? I asked cautiously. He closed his eyes for half a second, as if contemplating throwing himself down the elevator shaft. No, he said. His voice was lower. Rougher. Rough enough that something jumped in my stomach. Oh, I said intelligently. The hum of the emergency light buzzed over our heads. The air felt heavier, enclosed, warmed by our proximity. Somewhere deep in the building, machinery groaned like a trapped animal. But it wasn't the elevator that scared me. It was the way he was trying so hard not to breathe, not to look at me, not to acknowledge the thing between us that kept pulling tighter and tighter like a wire. Director Hayes. Don't, he said. His voice cracked on the word. Just a fraction. I swallowed. Don't what? He finally looked at me. Not fully, not straight on. But enough that his eyes flicked over my face, quick, sharp, hungry. I am, he said, then paused to drag in a breath through clenched teeth. I am not supposed to be able to register Omega scent. Register, I repeated. Wow. You make it sound like I'm a barcode. His jaw flexed. I have been conditioned not to respond. Conditioned, I echoed. Like, trained? Modified? I blinked. That's not better. He pushed off the wall, pacing one step like a man wrestling his own body. The yellow emergency lighting softened the angles of his face, but the tension carved deeper lines. When I was 17, he said, voice low. My instincts were strong. Strong. The way he said it made it sound like an understatement with layers of threat beneath it. My family wanted control, he continued. They enrolled me in a program, a suppressant trial. It muted scent, instinct, reaction, made me the perfect candidate for this floor. Meaning you haven't smelled anyone since you were a teenager? Yes. And yet, I said slowly, you smelled me. His eyes flicked to mine. This time, he didn't look away. His response was quiet, like he was confessing something dangerous. You cut through it. A pulse jumped at my throat. I wanted to make a joke. Something light. Something stupid. But the words died on my tongue. Because he stepped closer. Not a lot. Just one measured stride. But in a 6x6 metal box, even an inch felt like crossing a line. He inhaled again. This time, without fighting it. His pupils widened. His shoulders trembled, a tiny, involuntary shiver. He was unraveling. Not loudly. Not visibly. Just in the microfractures of a man held together by years of willpower. I wasn't supposed to feel anything, he said. And now you do. His throat bobbed. Yes. What exactly do you feel? I asked before I could stop myself. He went still. Then, with a voice that vibrated in the small space between us. You. My breath caught. He took another half step, slow enough that I could back away if I wanted. I didn't. His lips tightened as if in pain. I shouldn't be this close to you. So move, I whispered. I can't. Something in my chest flipped. He looked furious with himself. Furious with me. Furious with the scent that had somehow broken 15 years of engineered silence. I don't understand, I said softly. Why me? I don't know, he said. But I need you. He broke off, fists clenching at his sides. Need me to what? I pushed. He exhaled shakily. To stop talking? Why? His hands flexed, muscles contracting. His voice went low, ragged, a sound I felt rather than heard. Because I'm starting to feel, I whispered. His eyes burned. Yes. The elevator felt too small. My skin too warm. My thoughts too loud. He was so close I could feel his heat radiating across the tiny gap. His scent, not a scent but the ghost of one. Something faint and unfamiliar brushed against me like a half-remembered note of music. I reached out. Just a fraction. Just a tilt of my head. "Liam, don't," he said again. But this time it wasn't a command. It was a plea. A real one. The elevator jolted then. Mechanical protest, followed by a shuddering rise. The lights flickered back to full brightness. He froze. We both did. A heartbeat later, the elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Third floor. A maintenance tech blinked in surprise as he saw us standing. Too close, too still, too charged. Hayes straightened. His mask snapped into place with terrifying speed. You'd never know he just nearly unraveled in front of me. "Director Hayes," the tech stammered. "We got an alert." "Resume normal function," Hayes said sharply, stepping out. I followed. Because of course I did. Once we were out of earshot, he turned. His eyes, cold again, controlled again, landed on me with surgical precision. "Stay away from me," he said. "Because you feel me?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "Because I can't afford to." I smiled, unable to help it. "You say that like you think I can." He stared at me like I was the single worst complication of his career. Then he said it. "Stay away from me, Evan." I leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "I don't think I can," I said lightly. Something flickered behind his eyes. Something hot. Something dangerous. Something alive. He turned away. But he didn't argue. And I didn't feel afraid. Just curious. Curious enough to follow this to wherever it led. Even if the quiet floor was starting to sound a lot less quiet because of me. If avoidance were a sport, Liam Hayes would have been an Olympic champion. The day after the elevator incident, he didn't just keep his distance. He recalibrated. His whole orbit like I was a black hole at the center of the floor. He stayed in his office more. He sent Ellen to meetings he usually attended himself. He replied to emails with terrifying efficiency, but didn't once step within a 5-meter radius of my desk. At first I thought I was imagining it, my brain trying to make a pattern where there wasn't one. Then Yun wheeled his chair over with the subtlety of a car alarm and whispered, "Director today planned his walking paths like he's dodging torpedoes." I glanced toward the glass corridor, where Liam had just turned sharply to avoid the break room. "That obvious?" Yun pushed his glasses up. "He rerouted around the kitchenette when you were making tea. He rescheduled his one-on-one with me because it overlapped with your report review. He asked Ellen to batch all interactions with you to email." "Ouch," I said. "Guess I'm the torpedo." Yun grimaced. "More like the sonar ping he doesn't understand." "That's worse," I muttered. Across the floor, Marlowe pretended to focus on his screen, but I could see the way his shoulders were tight, his scent faintly uneasy. The rest of the floor felt it too, something in the air. A tension like static waiting for lightning. Liam wasn't just avoiding me. He was bending the entire rhythm of the floor, around the fact that he didn't want to be in the same room with me unless absolutely necessary. I probably should have respected that. I absolutely didn't. It started small. I accidentally left my scarf in conference room B after a data review. Soft wool, dark blue, still holding my scent. I watched from my desk as Ellen found it, froze, and then handled it with the care of someone moving a bomb. "Is this yours?" she asked, voice very, very level, dropping it on my chair at arm's length. "Depends," I said. "Is it going to be used in a workplace safety seminar?" "You left it in the room Hayes uses for investor calls," she said. "Don't do that again." "Noted," I said. I did it again in a week. Different room. Different scarf. Then there were the folders. Officially, I was supposed to upload my reports to the secure drive and send a notification. Unofficially, I started printing some of them and leaving the physical copies on his desk before he came in. Crisp paper, my notes in the margins, my presence lingering in the office even when I wasn't there. The first time, Ellen intercepted me at his door. "He doesn't like people in his office when he's not present," she warned. "Good thing I'm fast," I said, darting past her to drop the folder precisely in the center of his desk, my scent spilling over polished wood. She pinched the bridge of her nose. "You are going to give this floor hives. Do floors get hives?" I asked. "Apparently," she said, "since you arrived. The real crime, though, was the chair. I blame boredom. And curiosity. And the fact that his chair looked sinfully comfortable. I was 5 minutes early for a strategy sync. The conference room was empty. His seat at the head of the table sat there like a dare. So, Obviously, I took it. It was as ridiculous as it looked from outside. Perfect lumbar support, smooth leather, just the right angle of recline. It smelled like faint cleaning solution and the ghost of him, something that hadn't quite been erased. I leaned back, spun the chair a fraction left-right. "I'm Director Hayes," I muttered, in my best imitation of his voice. "I hate early arrivals, emotional expression, and breathable air." The door slid open. I stopped spinning. 3 people stepped in. Ellen, Yoon, and a senior beta I'd only seen in emails. All 3 froze when they saw me in the chair. Yoon's eyes went huge. Ellen's scent spiked in horror. The beta's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "Get up," Ellen mouthed, with all the intensity of a silent movie villain. "Why?" I whispered back. "I'm warming it." Before she could answer, Liam walked in. You could feel the moment he crossed the threshold. The air went denser, every wolf in the room unconsciously straightening. He carried a tablet and a folder, eyes on the agenda, posture carved from habit. Then he looked up. His gaze landed on me in his chair. The silence went from quiet floor normal, to intervention required awkward. I raised a hand. "Hi." His jaw flexed. "Out," he said. Not loud. Not even sharp. Just one word. So tightly controlled it might have cut steel. I stood. My heart pounded, but I grinned anyway because that's what I do when I should be afraid. "Relax," I said, stepping aside. I didn't mark it. Much. Half the room's scent flared in panic. He stared at me for a long clipped second, then took his seat. His fingers tightened around the edge of the armrest like he was restraining the urge to throw the chair, and me, out the window. We started the meeting. Or they did. I tried to focus. Really. But the tension rolling off him made it impossible not to notice every shift of his shoulders, every controlled breath. He was too close and too far at the same time. Close enough that my instincts strained. Toward him, far enough that he might as well have been behind bulletproof glass. We were halfway through a discussion of cross-floor risk models when it happened. "So the projections depend on the 31st's reporting cadence," Yoon was saying. Voice steadier than usual. "If their data keeps arriving late, we'll adjust their access privileges," Liam said. "If they cause delays they don't get priority data. That usually fixes punctuality issues." Ellen nodded. "We can draft a memo?" "Or," I said, because heaven forbid my sense of self-preservation actually show up for work, we could ask why they're late before treating them like misbehaving interns. 4 pairs of eyes snapped to me. Liam's did not. Not immediately. He sat very still, hands folded on the table. "Explain," he said. "Maybe they're understaffed," I said. "Maybe they got new hires who aren't up to speed. Cutting access doesn't solve bottlenecks, it just punishes them. And then they hate us. And I don't know if you've met the 31st, but they're petty." The senior beta frowned. "We don't manage their staffing." "No, but we depend on their output," I said. "If we nuke their access without context, we create resentment. Then they drag their feet on purpose, and suddenly everyone's miserable and behind schedule. We could just talk to them." Silence again. The wrong kind. I realized, distantly, that I'd just contradicted the director in front of half his core team. Respectfully I added, "Way too late." Liam lifted his gaze to me. There was a flicker of something hot, something sharp. "Once," he said, each word measured, "is a suggestion." He turned fully to face me. "Twice becomes a pattern," he continued, his voice sliding lower. "You challenge structure without understanding long-range impact. You leave your things where they don't belong. You occupy spaces you weren't invited into." The room's scent shifted, fear and anticipation mixing. "If you do it again," he said, voice dropping into a register I'd only heard in the elevator, "I will." He stopped. His throat worked, as if he'd run into a wall inside his own chest. For the first time in days, his control cracked in front of others. The air went electric. Every wolf in the room felt it. Ellen's fingers tightened on her pen. Yoon's scent spiked, sharp and panicked. Marlowe, quiet, almost invisible Marlowe, went very, very still. Liam's next breath was too deep. His pupils had blown wider, his nostrils flaring just slightly as my scent flooded the enclosed space. He was angry. But underneath that, confused, wanting, scared in a way I'd never seen on him before. He exhaled slowly, like he was extinguishing a fuse. "Don't do it again," he finished. The threat swallowed, his voice restored to something less dangerous. "This floor is not your experiment. The meeting limped on after that, but everyone's focus was shot. The scent of tension lingered long after we filed out. I went back to my desk, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Because when he'd turned toward me with that barely contained snarl under his skin, it wasn't just my wolf that had reacted. It was something deeper. Something that recognized a fracture in him and wanted irrationally to press on it. He came to me that evening. The office had drained of people, one by one. Screens dimmed, chairs pushed in, scents thinning. Outside, the city lights smeared across the glass in streaks of white and gold. The 33rd floor became even quieter when it was almost empty, as if the building itself were exhaling. I stayed late, pretending it was because I wanted to polish a report. Really, I just didn't want to go home with my head buzzing like this. I was halfway through rerunning some projections when I felt it, that subtle shift in air pressure that meant he was near. I looked up. He stood at the edge of my desk cluster, hands in his pockets, tie loosened a fraction. The shadows softened him, the harsh lines of the day blurred. "Director," I said cautiously. "Liam," he corrected, surprising me. His voice was quieter at this hour, less weaponized. "Liam," I repeated. The name tasted strange in my mouth. Too intimate. Too right. "Walk," he said. It wasn't quite a request. Not quite an order. Something in between. I shut down my screen and followed him, past the empty desks, past the silent conference rooms, to a small seating area near the far windows. A low couch, 2 chairs, a coffee table, the city sprawling beyond like a galaxy of artificial stars. He sat on one end of the couch. I sat on the other. We didn't look at each other at first. Just the glass. "When I was young," he said, without preamble, "my father told me I was going to ruin everything." I blinked. "Cheerful." "I was strong," he said. "Too strong, too reactive. Every scent, every emotion, I felt all of it. It made me volatile, unpredictable." He exhaled, eyes focused somewhere far beyond the window. "He wanted an heir who could sit in boardrooms and not growl," he continued. "Someone who could make numbers move instead of people bleed." "That's a low bar for a son," I muttered. "There was a program," he went on, as if I hadn't spoken. "A trial, chemical, neurological. They said it would refine my instincts, make me manageable." His fingers curled loosely on his knee. I watched the tendons shift. "The first round dulled scent," he said. "The second blunted my reactions. By the third, I could walk into a crowded pack meeting and feel nothing. No pull, no push, just quiet." "In your head," I said. "Everywhere," he said. "They called it success. And you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I called it peace," he said eventually. "At first. Because the noise stopped. But then, everything else did too." He swallowed, jaw flexing. "I watched people fall in love," he said. "Rage, break, heal. I watched wolves rise on instinct and fall on impulse. I made decisions about their futures with a clear head, no scent, no bias. I became exactly what my father wanted." He paused. I did not feel proud. I did not feel anything. The city lights blurred through the glass, streaks of gold over his reflection. "And then I came here," he said, "to this floor, where control is currency, where they liked that I was empty." He turned his head then, finally, and looked at me. "In 15 years," he said, "no one cut through it. Not one alpha, not one omega, not one beta. No one made my body forget what it had been trained not to feel." His eyes were too sharp in the low light, gray gone almost silver. "Until you walked into the hall with the cardboard box," he finished quietly. "And I nearly forgot how to breathe." My throat tightened. I wanted to say something flippant. I wanted to deflect. But seeing him like this, looser tie, lowered shield, honesty hanging in the air like something fragile, killed the jokes on my tongue. "You're not broken," I said instead. "You're not empty. They just dimmed you." His jaw clenched. "Don't romanticize this." "I'm not," I said. "I'm pissed. There's a difference." His lips twitched, the ghost of a bitter smile. "You're impossible. You're scared," I said gently. His gaze sharpened. "Of what exactly?" "Of your own instincts," I said. "Of what happens if all that stuff they shoved in the box starts getting out again." He looked away, the tension in his shoulders saying I'd hit closer than he liked. "You scare me, Evan," he said softly. That one landed like a weight in my chest. Heavy, real. I swallowed. You scare everyone, I said. You just do it silently. He huffed out a quiet, humorless breath. We sat there in the half-dark, the unsaid things piling up at our feet. Then he moved. Just a little. He shifted closer along the couch, the space between us compressing until I could feel the warmth of his body radiating through his suit jacket. My heart tripped over itself. He didn't look at me. His gaze stayed on some neutral point. His hand lifted, hesitant, almost clumsy for a man so precise, and settled near my arm. His fingers brushed my sleeve, barely. The lightest drag of heat. It wasn't even a full touch, just the ghost of one. But my body reacted like I'd been hit with live current. Every nerve lit up. My breath caught. My instincts leaned in, drunk on the tiny scrap of contact. He froze. His fingertips rested against the inside of my elbow, heat searing through the fabric. 1 second. 2. 3. Then he flinched. He snatched his hand back like he'd burned himself. Not now, he said, voice rough. My pulse thudded in my ears. When, then? He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. When I'm certain, he said, that I won't hurt you. The way he said it, low raw, hit me harder than any slick line ever could. I wanted to tell him I wasn't afraid, that I trusted myself around him, if not always the other way around. That whatever he thought he might do, I'd rather risk it than watch him retreat back into that carefully constructed emptiness. Instead, I leaned back into the couch, letting the tension unwind just enough to breathe. You don't get to decide alone whether I'm worth the risk, I said quietly. His eyes closed for a moment. I know, he said. The city hummed beyond the glass. The floor was so quiet we could hear the faint wheeze of the air system. The distant thrum of other floors living their messier, noisier lives. So, I said after a beat, because silence and I are sworn enemies. You going to keep dodging me like a torpedo? That depends, he said. On what? On whether you keep aiming yourself at me, he said dryly. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Oh, I said. I'm absolutely going to keep doing that. He opened his eyes and for a heartbeat I saw it all there, fear, frustration, heat, something like reluctant fascination. You're going to be the end of my career, he murmured. Or the beginning of your life, I said. We stared at each other for one breath too long. Then he stood, neatly buttoning his jacket like he was putting the walls back up brick by brick. Go home, Evan, he said. But there was no sharpness to it. Just a tired kind of gentleness. You've done enough damage for today. I watched him walk away, his reflection shrinking in the glass until he disappeared down the corridor. He thought he was dangerous. Thought he'd break me if he let go. But sitting there on the quiet floor, with his story still echoing in my chest, one thing settled into place like a decision I'd already made days ago. I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't a threat. I was a chance. And I wasn't going to leave until Liam Hayes understood the difference. By the end of the week, the 33rd floor felt like a badly tuned instrument. Everyone pretended nothing had changed, but the notes were off. Conversations were shorter, glances sharper, scents tighter. The wolves who prided themselves on control suddenly found themselves in the blast radius of something they couldn't quantify. Their director's instincts, slowly coming back from the dead. And me. The idiot who'd apparently handed them a shovel. Liam had gone from avoid the torpedo to manage the explosion. He didn't run anymore, not entirely. He still kept distance, still chose his routes carefully, but the avoidance was fraying around the edges, small slips and cracks where habit lost to whatever was waking up under his skin. He reacted in micro ways now. A slight inhale when I walked into a room. A pause in his typing when my scent drifted past the open door. A fraction too long stare when I challenged him in meetings. And I did challenge him, not to be difficult, to keep him moving. If he was going to come back to himself, he wasn't doing it alone. The breaking point came on a Friday. Of course it did. End of week energy, everyone tired, numbers blurring, tempers worn thin. We were in conference room C, reviewing a set of projections for a client whose name came with too many zeros. Ellen, Yun, 2 other analysts, and Liam at the head of the table. The air was stale with concentration and stress. We cut their risk privilege here, Liam said, tapping at the screen. They've been abusing access to predictive tools. Or, I said, they've been compensating for incompetence. His eyes slid to me. Which is not our problem, he said. It is if we tank a relationship without understanding why they're leaning on us, I said. They're trying to hide, they don't know what they're doing. We can either call them out in front of their board or help them not drown. We are not their life raft, he said. We are providers, not babysitters. So you'd rather sink them? Yes, he said. If they're a liability. Ellen cleared her throat softly. Yun sank lower in his chair. Wow, I said. Must be nice, making those calls without feeling anything. His jaw ticked. Don't. I leaned forward. Don't what? Point out that you're still using the same empty as efficient logic they wired into you as a teenager? Evan, Ellen warned quietly. I ignored her. Because I was already over the edge, and there was no way back but through. You have the power to help them course correct, I said, voice sharper now. But sure, let's cut them off, let them crash, and then call it risk management instead of what it is. Cowardice. The room went ice cold. Liam's eyes darkened. Everyone out, he said, without looking away from me. No one argued. There was a rustle of papers, the muted scrape of chairs, a spike of apprehension in the air as everyone evacuated. Ellen hesitated at the door, sent thick with worry. Now, he added, and she slipped out, closing the glass behind her. We were alone. The quiet on the 33rd floor was usually smooth, polished. Now it was jagged, humming under my skin. You done? He asked. No, I said. Not even close. His nostrils flared. You think this is a game, he said. You push. You provoke. You act like the consequences don't matter. Oh, they matter, I said. That's why I keep pushing. You're the one pretending they're just numbers on a page. His voice dropped. You don't understand what happens if I lose control? I cut in. Yeah, I got that part. You've said it enough times. He stepped around the table, closer, each stride a warning. Do you think I don't know myself? He demanded. Do you think I haven't seen what I'm capable of without restraint? If I fall apart, if I snap, it won't just be you who pays for it. It'll be this floor, these people, this entire system built on the assumption that I do not crack. He was in front of me now, just out of reach. Heat radiated off him, stronger than I'd ever felt. My heart stuttered, but I held my ground. You're not afraid of me, I said softly. You're afraid of you. His eyes flashed. If I break, he said, it will be because you kept chipping away at everything that holds me together. If I snap, if I fall back into what I was, they will blame me. But it will be because of you. So? I said. His brows slammed together. So? I lifted my chin. So snap. Fall apart. Stop using me as an excuse not to feel anything. If I'm the one who woke it up, fine. Then I'll stand here and deal with it. But don't you dare keep hiding behind what they did to you and pretend it's about protecting me. He stared at me like I'd just declared war on gravity. If I lose control, he said, voice low and dangerous, it will be on you. Then let it be on me, I shot back. But for once in your life, be alive when you make a choice. Something broke. Not with sound. Not with movement. With scent. It hit me like a wave, warm, deep, lush. Not the faint almost scent I'd caught in the elevator. Not the ghost of potential. This was fully awake, fully here. Heat and spice, and something that felt like standing too close to a fire on a winter night. My knees went weak. Okay, I breathed. That's new. His shoulders had dropped a fraction, as if something heavy had finally slipped off. His pupils were blown wide, his gaze fixed on me like there was nowhere else in the world to look. I was supposed to be empty, he said. Each word vibrated straight through me. That's what they wanted. A clear head. No instinct. No bias. He took a step closer. My back hit the glass wall. Conference room C fell away. It was just him, and heat, and that scent wrapping around me like a second skin. But next to you, he murmured. I remember exactly what I was before they muted me. He lifted a hand, bracing it against the glass near my head. Not touching me. Not yet. But close enough that I felt his body like a gravitational field. You? Smell for me, he said. Quiet. Devastating. Only you. My throat was so tight it hurt. I figured. I managed, my voice rough. You've been breathing like you're trying not to drown every time I walk into a room. A flicker of a smile touched his mouth. Tiny. Real. Subtlety was never your strength, he said. Why start now? I whispered. His gaze dropped to my mouth, then snapped back up, as if he didn't trust himself to linger. You woke something I wasn't supposed to get back, he said. Instinct, want, anger. All of it. Good, I said. He blinked. Good? Yes, good, I said. You're not a machine, Liam, you're a person. A scary one, sure, but still a person. And you're not broken, you've been on mute. If I'm the one who knocked the volume up, then, okay. I can live with that. His shoulders eased, the tension shifting from brittle to molten. For 15 years, he said slowly, rooms were just rooms, wolves were just data, omegas were noise without meaning. And then there was you. And suddenly, I couldn't walk past a hallway you'd used without my pulse changing. He shook his head once, like he still couldn't believe it. I've been fighting it since the second you stepped out of that elevator with your horrible cardboard box, he said. Hey, I said. That box was emotionally attached to me. The corner of his mouth lifted. This time, fully. The smallest, sharpest smile I'd ever seen from him, and it did something weird to my chest. I didn't want this, he said. I didn't ask for it. But His jaw flexed. I don't think I can go back. Not after this. Then don't, I said simply. His hand dropped from the glass. For a heartbeat, he just stood there, looking at me like I was both the problem and the solution to the entire mess of his life. Then he reached out. Slowly. As if he were learning the motion for the first time. His fingers brushed mine. Light, at first. Like he was afraid I'd flinch. When I didn't, he slid his hand more fully over mine, palm to palm, warm and surprisingly shaky. His thumb pressed against my skin with a quiet, hungry insistence. Not a grab. Not a claim. A choice. You're my problem now, he said softly. I huffed out a breath that skated dangerously close to a laugh. So I am your problem. He nodded once. My only one? Oh, I said. That actually makes living sound easier. His gaze softened in a way I hadn't known it could. Less ice, more steel warmed in the sun. Evan, he said quietly, like it meant something, like he was trying the taste of my name without armor. Yeah? You woke the beast, he said. No drama, no grand flourish. Just simple truth, weighted and sure. Don't expect me to let you walk away now. Something in my chest answered that like a second heartbeat. That's convenient, I said, my mouth stretching into a grin I couldn't stop, because I wasn't planning to. His fingers tightened around mine. Good, he murmured. Then run, argue, provoke. Do whatever it is you do. But understand one thing, which is... He leaned in, not quite touching, his breath warm against my cheek, his voice low enough that only I could hear it. I'm done pretending I don't want to catch you. The heat in his scent curled around us, rich and heady, and I had the absurd thought that HR would probably combust if they saw this. Try to keep up then, I whispered back. He huffed something that might have been a laugh, and stepped back just enough to breathe without losing contact. We stood there, hands still linked, in the glass box of the quiet floor, while the rest of the building hummed on around us. Somewhere outside, footsteps passed, voices murmured. No one came in. For once, I didn't feel the urge to fill the silence. He squeezed my hand once more, reluctantly letting go. There will be adjustments, he said, slipping his professional voice back on like a well-worn coat. People will talk. Let them, I said. They already do. At least now they'll have better material. He gave me that almost smile again. Go log your hours, he said softly. Before I do something neither of us can explain in an HR-friendly way. Tempting, I said. But, fine. I do like being employed. I moved toward the door, pulse still wild, legs thankfully remembering how to function. My hand still tingled where his had been. At the threshold, I glanced back at him, standing there, tie askew, scent warmed, eyes very much alive. Hey, Liam? I said. Yes? I swept a look around the immaculate conference room. The polished glass, the carefully controlled air of the 33rd floor. The quiet floor? I said, might need a rebrand. His brow rose. Oh, yeah, I grinned. Feels like it's about to get a lot louder. And for once, he didn't disagree.